Brad Pitt was never merely a famous person. His life has always been tugged between extremes that most people would not be able to handle. For decades, he was one of the most untouchable people in Hollywood. Everyone wanted him, admired him, and couldn't ignore him. He could change the mood of a room just by being there, without speaking a word. From the outside, it looked like everything was around him: success, love, money, and fame. But underneath that picture, something considerably weaker was slowly crumbling apart. Relationships didn't endure long. Over time, he spent less and less time with his kids. Years went by in silence, in struggle, and in ways that the public never truly saw. Even though the spotlight stayed bright, his private life became calmer. In many respects, the man who everyone thought had everything was alone. That weight is heavier than ever now that he's in his 50s. Because loss doesn't usually happen all at once. Sometimes it fades slowly, and then one day the stillness is louder than everything else that used to fill your existence. And the question still stands: does someone like him ever really achieve peace, or do certain things never let go completely? He was born in Shawnee, Oklahoma, on December 18, 1963, and grew up in Springfield, Missouri. He was raised in a strict, religious, and disciplined way. His father believed in order and control, and his mother gave him love, but only within certain limits. It wasn't a broken home, but people often hid their feelings. He learned early on how to read a room, how to change himself, and how to keep things in instead of letting them out. That pattern had already set in by the time he was 10. He was friendly and full of potential at school. Things seemed more controlled, tighter, and quieter at home. There was a rule that everyone followed: deal with things on your own, don't show weakness, and keep the grin on your face. He would later say that he learned to use that smile as a cover as he carried feelings he didn't comprehend. From the outside, everything appeared okay, which may have made it harder. Because even if everything looked fine, something deeper was already starting to grow inside him. He was calm in church and didn't ask too many questions. He worked harder at school to fit in. But at night, when he was alone with his thoughts, he had a peaceful notion that maybe he might live his whole life without ever really being understood. That emotion didn't go away. It went after him. He didn't break in visible ways as he got older. Instead, he became more careful and regulated. He had learned to hold everything in so firmly by the time he was a teenager that there was hardly any place left to breathe. But inside that control, something else started to grow: a deep longing to experience something true, to be honest with himself, and to live without always holding back. That urge eventually drove him out from Missouri. He started to feel stuck while studying journalism in college. It seemed like his future was already set, and it didn't feel like his own. He made a choice that didn't make sense to most people when he was 23 and almost done with school. He went away. He drove to Los Angeles with very little money and no real strategy. He wasn't looking for stardom, he was looking for something he couldn't quite articulate. Something that seemed more genuine than the world he was leaving behind. The truth he found there was not at all glamorous. He did whatever tasks he could find, like driving people about, moving equipment, and even dressing up as a character on the street to make money. It was tiring, embarrassing, and often depressing. But he didn't go back. Acting was the only place he didn't have to conceal. He could finally feel things he had been keeping within for years. It wasn't simply a job, it was a way to let go. But for a while, it was hard to be successful. Little parts, appearances in the background, and scenes that didn't linger long on screen. He was there, but no one actually saw him. And that made him wonder if he had left all behind for no reason. Then, in the early 1990s, everything changed. A small part in a movie made him famous all of a sudden. People couldn't stop looking at him overnight. But instead of feeling good, something inside him got tighter. He didn't want people to only know him for how he appeared. He wanted others to get him. That was the start of a new kind of fight. His fame expanded as his career progressed. He was more than just a picture in film after film. He worked hard, took chances, and eventually became one of the most renowned actors in the business. By the time he was in his 40s, he was making millions of dollars per movie and changing how a whole generation thought about success and manhood. But still, something didn't seem right. He subsequently said that he often felt like he was running away from something but didn't know what it was. Even at the height of his career, there were evenings that were too quiet and thoughts that were too loud. He had everything on paper since he was successful, but he didn't feel at ease as he had hoped. He sought significance beyond acting, creating films that conveyed profound narratives that mirrored struggle, authenticity, and human intricacy. But even if people started to value his work more, he never really found that inner peace. Later in life, he won an Academy Award, which was one of the biggest highlights of his career. It was the kind of success that should have ended the narrative. But when the moment was over and the audience was gone, the same question still stood. Success can fill a career, but it can't always fill what's missing inside. His personal life was also like this. Early relationships came and went swiftly, and sometimes they ended suddenly or in front of other people. Times that should have been private become news stories. And with each one, something deeper lingered behind, not only sadness, but a deepening feeling of being seen without really being recognized. That same trend happened again, even in love. There were partnerships that felt real and like they might last. But timing, stress, and personal problems often got in the way of them being together. He thought he had finally discovered something secure and lasting with one person. But it wasn't loud or spectacular when it was over, it was quiet, which made it tougher. It wasn't just losing a person. He lost the future he had already pictured. He kept looking, though. Then there was a relationship that everyone in the world observed intently. It felt like something strong and real. They established a life that appeared perfect together, a family, a common goal, and a sense of direction. It worked for a time. He loved being a father very much. He didn't want to mess it up because it was the most important thing in his life. Their family grew swiftly, and for a while, it seemed like everything had come together. But there was a lot of strain developing under that picture. Busy lives, always needing attention, and personal problems that weren't adequately dealt with all mounted up over time. And in the end, it got to a point where it couldn't be changed. A moment came that changed everything. It wasn't known to the public. There was no way to explain it away. It was real, and it made me choose to terminate the relationship for good. After that, everything changed. He had to deal with not just the termination of his marriage, but also the fact that he was alone with his thoughts. And more than anything, he missed his kids. That was the hardest part. A house that used to be full became quiet. He no longer saw him every day. And no amount of accomplishment could make up for that need. Later, he said that he had been given something really valuable by his family and that he hadn't kept it the way he should have. That kind of understanding doesn't go away. It stays there. There were many court disputes, public opinions, and personal thoughts in the years that followed. Things that used to mean love now remind me of what I've lost. And even while the world kept watching, the underlying truth stayed private. It didn't happen all at once that he was far away from his kids. It took a long time for it to happen. And that made it even harder to accept. Because some losses aren't loud. They are calm. They show up in vacant places, in squandered chances, and in things that don't come back. Things look different now that I'm older. He is more careful and lives more quietly. He keeps working, and people still respect and listen to him. But he feels that his life is less about chasing success and more about figuring things out. He has worked on growing as a person, being grounded, and facing problems he used to avoid. It seems like he's not running anymore, he's trying to figure out where he's been. There are still relationships, but they seem more private, more stable, and less based on getting attention. But even now, one thing is still important: his kids. They've gotten bigger. They've made their own lives. And there is still some gap. That distance doesn't need headlines. It's just there. And for someone who used to make being a parent the most important thing in his life, that absence is heavy and nothing else can make it light. Time has transformed him in a physical way. The young picture has grown up into something more real and thoughtful. He doesn't strive to prove anything anymore, he just lives with what he's learnt. In his work, he is still powerful. his power hasn't gone away. It has grown more clear, if anything. But his story doesn't seem like a total success anymore. It feels like balance between what was achieved and what was lost, between what was done and what happened. And maybe that's why so many people can relate to his life. Not because it's perfect. But it isn't. It shows that even people who seem to have everything can still lose things, feel bad about things, and need to grow. That no amount of celebrity or success can keep someone safe from the things that really matter in life. His story isn't only about Hollywood, relationships, or accomplishments in the end. It's about something far more human. The notion that the most significant elements, time, presence, and connection, do not vanish simultaneously. They go gone slowly. And one day, you notice how quiet they are now. That's what makes people remember his story. Not the fame. Not the success. But it serves as a reminder that what counts most isn't what the world sees. It's what stays after everything else is quiet.